Good day, everyone. Welcome to the IATA Digital Cargo webinars. So this session will be dedicated to one record. And here, this is David So speaking. I'm manager in the digital cargo team of IATA. So this episode is replacing the digital cargo conference that we usually have in Geneva. And for this year, we decided to go for a digital cargo conference. I would like to thank you, our principal sponsor, IBS Software, and our supporting sponsor, PayCargo and Rigor Software. Even though this event is a virtual event, I need to remind you that this presentation will be conducted in compliance with the antitrust law. And you may know that element of commercial marketing, group boycotts, and anything that is not compliant to antitrust laws will not be able to be discussed. For this webinar, you can only hear the presenters. Your microphone has been muted, but you will be able to use the question box to interact with the different presenters. And actually, what we will do is that should you have any questions, you will be able to type in your questions in this box, and you will we will answer the questions at the end of the session. We have a dedicated Q&A session for that, and we'll pick up the questions and the opportunity for the speakers to answer it. This meeting is recorded so that even if you miss it, you will be able to catch up on that. The event will be recorded and the materials will be published on our website, iata.org/onerecord. Let's dive into the topic. So this session will be divided in 5 parts. The first one is a short introduction and update from my side on where we stand on the One Record development. Then Andra Blage will be sharing with you the One Record developer portal, and actually she will do a live demo. Then we will have as a guest speaker Malcolm Fowler from Cgs Uk and Pramod Rao from Nextshore. They will share with us their lessons learned on the pilot project that they did in Heathrow. And then we will have a panel discussion that will be moderated by Christophe Lambert. And the guest speakers are Philippe Billion from Lufthansa, Shashank Mardika from Swiss World Cargo, and Mary Sterling from DGF. They will talk about what's like to be in one of the working group and what has been done, particularly in the context of One Record. And as I mentioned, at the end of the session, we'll have dedicated time to take questions and answers that you would have put in the web on the chat box. So what did we do this year? So just a reminder, One Record, as you know, is our new standard for data sharing. And the objective is to move from the peer-to-peer messaging model to a virtual shipment record. And for that, we built the standard based on the 3 pillars. The first one is what we want to share as information. So it's going to be done through the data. And then the second one is how we want to share these data elements, and it's going to be done through APIs. And finally, the last one is with whom I want to share my data in a secure manner, and it's going to be done through the security. The One Record standard is a data-centric model, as opposed to the current one, which is a document-centric model. And it will provide more visibility and transparency for the different stakeholders. It will improve the data quality, removing any redundancies or mistakes. And it will eliminate all the duplicate that we can have from the different documents that we handle today. For that, the design that we adopted is to build the data model around an airline core ontology that aims to have all the minimal requirement for the transportation of the general cargo, and which is detailed enough to be able to track and manage at piece level. And then on top of this airline core ontology, we add we detail some add-ons that are a set of data elements that would be required to address a specific area or type of product or type of operations. So for instance, we identified inter cargo, how to make sure that we can interact with the different pieces and the shipment. We made sure that we can have all the data elements for dangerous goods and pharmaceutical products, that we comply with any advanced cargo information required by the customs authorities, that we can make cargo distributions from the carrier to the forwarder, that we can also manage the CO2 emissions and communicate on that. We do have ULD tracking and handling operations. These new standards come with lots of industry benefits that has been long awaited. So first, it's the data quality and control. As the data is shared by the data owner, we can have a full control of the data. The data stays at the source, which will eliminate the risk of data quality issues, and the owner determines who can have access to the data. And then it will give all the different stakeholders more visibility and transparency. We want to target the end-to-end transport chain from the shipper to the consignee, and being able to share the data of the shipment with the different parties that are relevant in the transportation chain. And that would enhance the visibility and the transparency. Next is also super important, because this is what we call the plug-and-play connectivity. With the standard APIs, we want to facilitate the connectivity between the different stakeholders, and we can compare it with the use of the USB standard, where today, if you have any equipment or devices that has a USB port, you know that you can plug it into your computer and it will work. You don't worry whether you need to have a specific connector or whatever. You just plug it and you can enjoy the device. The last 2 points are essential because it deals with our people, the people that is part of our industry. With this new standard, what we want to do is to build the future of digital cargo, building true foundations where we would be able to add digital services, value-added services on top of this infrastructure. And also, we want to be able to offer technology that is ready for the new generations, because the students that are currently in college and that will graduate it and that will join our industry, they don't want to learn all technology that has been developed by our grandparents, but they want to work with current technologies, even with future technologies. So all these 5 benefits are benefits that can only be brought with the new one record standard and moving from our legacy system to data sharing. Now I will take you through the status of where we stand on the development part. So as a reminder, we started this piece of work with the creation of the task force in June 2018 under the Cargo Operations and Technology Board, with the objective to define first a data model to be able to share a common language between the different stakeholders. Then to develop the API specifications to make sure that all the different parties they can use the same API to share data. And finally, to specify and define the security requirement to make sure that we can exchange data in a secure manner. So we relied on the development of the standards on the whole industry. We had more than 60 participants that are representing the whole industry, like I said, from the shipper to consignee, including, of course, freight forwarder, GSA, the airlines, the grounding agents, also associations representing shippers. We had Cargo IQ as well. We had customs authorities involved, and of course, IT providers and CCSs. For 2020, our objective is to capitalize on the first set of development and first set of standard that has been published in 2019. And this year, we want to make sure that whatever we've developed is fit for purpose. We will do that through the different pilot projects. We will also enhance the standard based on what has been initially developed and to improve it. And we developed as well what we will see later, the One Record developer portal that will help to accelerate the standard adoption through different tools. So what we did is that we take the standard, we plant the seeds, and then we made it grow into the One Record flower, which is based on tools. We did a hackathon, we have pilot projects, and lots of communication materials. Starting with the seeds themselves, which is the standard. So the standard is composed of the data model specifications that provide the industry with the standard structure and data exchange using JSON LD. And this is what will define the air cargo catalog or the common language that everyone needs to speak. And then we have the API specifications, and this will specify the way the different stakeholders can interface and interact through web APIs with the different parties. And lastly, the security specifications will define and will describe requirements to have a federated trust network and to ensure that the data exchange between the different parties can be done in a secure manner and ensure data privacy and confidentiality for all the different parties. So end of last year, we introduced the concept of level of maturity, which will enable us to look at the robustness and the completude of the standard. So we do that on the data models part, where we listed all the different components. So you will find here all the different add-ons. And we'll do the same with the API security, where we listed all the different features. And for each of these domain or features, we assigned so what I called the maturity level. So we have 5 of them. Ideation. So the first stage where we discuss about an idea, about first requirement. And then the second stage is what we call experimental. Is we have pretty good idea of what we want to do, and we start to draft something. And then as a third stage, we take this draft, we discuss it within the expert groups, and we come up with a proposal. During the fourth stage, which is verified, we integrate the proposal into pilot project, we run it, and we look at it, and we look if the proposition is fit for purpose. Once it has been verified, it goes to the last stage, which is adopted. And this is where the standard is proposed to the COTB, so the Cargo Operation and Technology Board. And this governance body will endorse the standard, and it will be adopted by the industry. So this is the way today we monitor and we drive the standard development. You can find this document that is published on the One Record website, and it is updated on a regular basis. Coming to the communication part, this year we have focused a lot on communications, and actually we took advantage of the period between March and this summer, where most of us were confined at home. To take time to reflect on what we did, what we want to communicate, how we want to communicate. And we came up first with the complete revamp of the website, our OneRecord website, where we'll find all the information that we have. So first, the tab on that describe the project. Then you're gonna have a tab which is called resource, where you can have all the articles, white papers, documentations of the project. The online event, I'll come back to it, is a table where you can have the link of all our events with the presentation materials and the video recording of the past events. Hackathon is the link to our hackathon. So you will find the latest hackathon, and to date we did 3 editions. The first one in Geneva 2 years ago, the second one in Madrid last year, and this year we had our first virtual hackathon that has been held everywhere. Then the standard tab is the link to our standard, which is published on GitHub. Then we have the tools tab, where you will find the link to the developer portals and a few other tools. We will see that in a few minutes. The pilots tab will give you a highlight of the different pilot participants and the different use cases that are currently being delivered. And finally, we have a new tab which is dedicated to the multilateral data agreement, but I will come back later on it as well. So as you can see, the OneRecord website is a one-stop shop for all the different supporting materials that you would need about the project. So if you look for information, this is the place to go. So it starts, for instance, with all the OneRecord Insights articles that we published and we are continuing to write. Today we have 12 of them, and the number 13 will be issued in the coming hours or days. That will be dedicated to the memento. Then also we have a collection of white papers. So today we already published first edition that is dedicated to OneRecord data model. 2 are scheduled, dedicated on the OneRecord API, and the third one will be dedicated on the OneRecord security. You may have seen as well that over the summer, we had our first batch of webinars with 6 episodes that if you miss them, you can catch up on our website. You will find all the links to the supporting materials and the video recording. On the pilot project side, so the objective of the pilot, like I said, is to verify that whatever we developed is fit for purpose. Bring the expected value, and also we take this opportunity to capture the lessons learned and as an input for standard improvement. And today we formalized already 11 use cases, and we have around 50 companies that are part of our pilot project program. This year, we also developed with the different legal departments involved a multilateral data agreement, which is very similar to what we did with EAWeBill with the multilateral EAWeBill agreement. So basically, this is an agreement where all the different parties they will be able to sign once for all, and after that, they will be able to start to engage with data sharing, and they will be covered from a data point of view. So it's a free of charge. It provides the necessary legal framework to establish the data exchange. As I mentioned, it avoids to have the need to negotiate with all the different parties that you want to work with. So you sign it once for all. And then you can start working on a OneRecord environment. The different parties that signed the MDA will be published on the IATA, similarly to what we did with the MEA. Then we have the hackathon. So the last hackathon was a virtual event that has been held on the last weekend during the 12th and the 30th of September. And we had a global participations coming from 33 nationalities. We had almost 180 participants and 17 teams. So during the weekend, the teams, they had 1 minute to pitch their initial ideas. And then they had 28 hours of coding to develop their project. And at the end of the weekend, they had 5 minutes to present their project in front of a jury members of 8 people. And if you want to know more about the outcome of the hackathon, I will encourage you to save the date, October the 1st, 2 o'clock CST, with Arnaud Lambert, who will share more about what happened during this weekend. And lastly, on the tool side, we had 3 main updates. So first is the publication of the One Record Implementation Playbook. Some of you may know the EAO-Build Implementation Playbook. Here we take the same recipe, and this document aims to be a pointer to the different resources that we have and to guide you through step by step the implementation of One Record. So you will find the different steps. You will find how to get access to the relevant informations, and you will find details on dedicated topics, for instance, APIs or security. On the data model side, we published as well what we call the Mlp Mapper, which basically take the industry master operating plan and look at the data model, the One Record data model, how these two can interact together. So basically, you will be able to see for each activity of the Mlp, for each task even of the Mlp, what are the elements of the One Record data model that you will need to create, amend, modify to be able to make sure that you can share all the relevant data elements for a given part of the process. So this tool is an Excel document that you can have access. It's freely available on our website as well. Last part, and probably the most important tool that we launched this year, is the One Record developer portal that has been developed by Andra Blage. This is the one-stop shop for anyone who wants to implement One Record. And I think that for that, the best way for me is to hand over now to Andra. She will take you through that portal and walk you through and let you discover what we wanted to offer to you.
Okay, thank you, David. So I'm Andra Blage, I'm developer for One Record. And today I'm going to walk you through the features of our brand new developer portal. I'm going to share my screen with you now. Hopefully it will work correctly. Okay, so now you should see the homepage of it. So during the last year, we have worked on several documentation, specifications, testing tools, POC on security, and we have produced a lot of material and testing environments. So we wanted to have a place to gather all this scattered information for technical experts, business experts who would like to get their hands dirty and start working with One Record. So this developer portal is meant at being a one-stop shop, especially for companies and individuals that would really like to test the standard and learn more, like really deep dive into the features of One Record. It contains many features, starting with, for example, the Start Now tab. We'll get you to the One Record IATA page for One Record IATA page that David presented you, which contains a lot of information, mostly documentation about One Record. Then there's this documentation that also contains, for example, the specifications of One Record from GitHub, together with our design principles, a logical data model, the ontology, which is a turtle file that the developers, for example, can use to implement in their application. So this is our GitHub page. You can find the link there. Then we have a Swagger API documentation. I'm going to get you through that a bit later. Ontologies, Playbook, the insights, white papers, everything is gathered here. Okay. So regarding the tools, as David presented you, we have three main pillars in one record, which is the data model, API, and security. So this tools tab will bring you to some testing environments that we have implemented to better showcase these pillars. Okay, so first of them is the Ontology Manager. We have created one big main ontology which contains all the air cargo related vocabulary. And then there is a smaller API ontology which contains like a vocabulary related to specific operations of the API, such as publisher, subscriber, versioning, and other features. So I'm going just to show you a bit what the visualizer contains. So basically, it has a description of all the objects that were kind of created for the one record cargo ontology. It's quite verbose, but it is crucial for those who would like to implement a one record, as this ontology is the starting point of getting started actually. So you have here the description details of all the elements of the vocabulary. Also, you have a nice visualizer. Yeah, and I invite you to go and take a look at that if you want to learn more. So we have the same sort of ontology visualizer for the API one, which is a bit shorter, and it contains, as I was saying, models that are strictly related to API operations, like error models and other. But you can also go and take a look at that. Then the second important tools, it's what we call the Swagger API documentation. Actually, is a live environment of our one record server. So you can just go there and start testing the one record API endpoints. You can find all these API specifications on our GitHub. So if you want to kind of learn more, you can take the specifications, read them, and at the same time try to test this Swagger documentation and then see exactly how it works. So just for example, I can show you one. Here you have all the models, how do they look like. So this for developers is very, very easy to use. And it's very also easy to run it locally. And I'm going to explain a bit later how that would be done. Then we have a third tool, which is the security portal. And we have developed proof of concept regarding API security, which is based on mutual TLS and OAuth 2 principles. So for those who would like to generate certificates and try and start already to add a security layer on their one record APIs, they would just need to contact us to get an account on this security portal, and then they will be able to generate certificates and already start testing. Then we have a second tab, which is resources. There you can find a compilation of all the documents that are related to one record, such as design principles, development dashboard that David showed you a bit earlier, which we update constantly. So if you want to find out what has been done during the latest months, you just take a look at the dashboard. Then the playbook, business process, specifications, the insights, and also the multilateral disclosure agreement. So you can have everything here. Then we have another tab, which is the code samples. Here we have for now links to our one record GitHub repository. There is one for the one record specifications. Then there is one for the one record Java sandbox, which is the environment behind that Swagger API documentation that I've shown you a few minutes ago. So basically on this one record sandbox, you should just follow the instructions from the README on GitHub, and then you should be able to run it locally and have the same Swagger documentation locally. And then there is also a one record security layer implemented in .NET by our partner who implemented the security proof of concept. So basically, if you're a .NET developer, you can already download this code and have a mutual TLS layer on your application. And then also you can find our at the Digital Cargo page, so you can already follow us on GitHub if you want to always have the updates from our repositories. Then we also have links to webinars. I'm not going to go there again because it's related to our webinars that David presented, my fact sheet, and also a very important feature of the developer portal, it's a bibliography. So we have compiled a list of technical references that would be crucial for the, especially for the technical experts that would like to know more about the technical concepts behind one record. So we have nice documentation about RDF, all JSON, link data, security and access control, for example, about mutual TLS, OAuth2, web access control. Then about the federated, it's a UE project in which IATA is involved. And then other topics like Memento protocol, which is a concept that we use for API versioning, then Protégé, which is a tool that we use for ontology creation, Shackle, and many other things. So if you see a lot of RDF languages all down in our documentation, if you really want to know what it is, please take a look at this bibliography, and then you have everything there. Then on the next tab, we have a showcase. One of the most important features of the showcase on which we are currently working is the demo. It's not live yet, but we plan to finish that soon. So we'll make an announcement when this is done. But this will be a very nice environment on which you can see live how one record compliant ecosystem should work. Then we have a pilot that will bring you to more information about the pilots, and then the hackathon page, which for now it contains links to the outcome of our hackathon that we held last weekend. So yeah, usually here we had the registration links. Now it's as it's already done, we have the outcome ones. And then we have more information about the community, such as governance, all the events, and then contact and FAQ. So if you need to contact us, you'll find a link to that. And also you'll find some frequently asked questions. Yeah, for now we don't have so many, but we plan to constantly improve this portal and add more information. Now, of course, we are open to your suggestions. So if you are trying to learn more things about one record and you don't find the information, write to us and we'll find a place to add it and to make sure that everyone has what they need to start working with one record. So I think that this is it from my side. Please go and take a look. And we are waiting for your feedback. Okay, thank you. I will leave David.
Thank you, Andra. So over the past two parts, we looked at the standard itself. Andra shared with you the detailed view on the tools that is in the developer portal. And now we will share with you what's like to implement one record in real life. And for that, I'm glad to have as a guest speaker Michael Fowler, who is representing Cgs Uk User Group, and Pramod Rao, who is the CEO of Nextshore Technologies. Over to you guys.
Thank you, David, and hello, my name is Malcolm Fowler, and I'm representing the Cgs Uk User Group this afternoon. For those of you who don't know about the Cgs Uk User Group, it's just a short introduction. It's a cargo community service that's been operating in the air mode since 1994. Its main purpose is for customs clearance, anti-smuggling, network, and other customs services. actually provides an inventory management for all of the import cargo coming into the UK by air, and we also report exports to the UK government. It does a bit of airline and community messaging, but it's mainly best known for its interconnecting forwarders, transit sheds and airlines to HMRC, that's Her Majesty's Border Force, Revenue and Customs and Border Force for air cargo. We've got about 1,000 forwarders and transit sheds and airlines on the system. We operate in most of the UK airports, and we also provide functionality for moving freight in bond between sheds and airports around the UK. We do a bit of maritime work, but that's the companies that do air and maritime through the CCS UK. Next slide, and I'm going to hand over to Pramod to introduce Nextshore.
Thank you very much, Malcolm, and thank you for having me on the show, David. My name is Pramod Rao. I'm the CEO of Nextshore Technologies. Just a brief introduction to Nextshore. We've been developing software for the logistics area for the last 12 years. That's our statement right there. We try to enhance the business value of our clients. We have some industry recognitions and some strategic partnerships. One with Microsoft here particularly played a good role for us, as you will see later on in the presentation. Back to you, Malcolm.
Thank you. Okay, so we're talking about getting going with One Record this afternoon, and I want to just take you through our journey right through from the start to the finish, and explain how we got going. So the initial ideas for a One Record pilot were developed by a small team at Heathrow. Heathrow Airport were very good at putting a lot of us together and kicking the thing off. And as you can see there, we had CCS UK, IAG, Virgin, Cathay, and ground handling agent Dinata. Once we decided to get going, we approached IATA and asked them to give us some more detail about how this all worked. And Henk and David provided some very good feedback on how we should get going, and gave us the details and the small print for the project. We then went, took those ideas, were discussed and modified by the wider community, and we registered the project with IATA. So IATA keep track of all of the pilots that are going on. Next slide. So this is the scorecard that we provided to IATA, just to give a very brief headline description of what we were planning to do. So implementing a One Record specification based on all of the documentation that you heard Andrew talk about, pulled from GitHub. We looked at some traditional movement of data, so master airway builds from 2 forwarders in the UK, moving through a One Record hub, and 2 airlines and 1 ground handler. We agreed on the London-Hong Kong to London route, and we, if we had time, we agreed that we would move some status messages through the system as well. And then we planned a second phase, and we may have time to talk about that as we go through. Then there's the logos of the companies, just to give some recognition to who was working with us. And then you can see the timelines that we put along the bottom. So we started the groundwork in April, and then we finalised the trials in July. So you can actually see not too long to get going, and a very interesting time. Next slide, please. So moving into development, we gathered the business requirements. We did spend some time writing those down so that we knew exactly what we were building, and the group approached Nextshore to build the system. After that, we started a 2-weekly video progress meeting with the wider team, and then those who are actually active in the pilot. It's very interesting. Although we only had a few active participants, the meetings every week were attended by most of the group, and I think there's a lot of learning going on during this for both the pilot participants and the wider group. Next slide, please. Okay, I'll just hand over to Pramod now.
Thank you, Malcolm. This slide tries to explain what happened after we got the business requirements that Malcolm just referred to. Once they were frozen, we set about looking at the specifications, like Malcolm said, the one that Andrea had maintained, and of course all of the IATA team. We got all that information in, and we decided to create one record server in the node format, given that the number of stakeholders at Heathrow were quite large and potentially could get larger. So they were provided to us by IATA, and we decided on that architecture. We decided to put it on the cloud. We chose the Microsoft Azure cloud. Our partnership with them enabled us to get some pretty inexpensive hardware going in the UK area. And the node architecture that we adopted provides for a completely isolated account secured by its own one record ID on an application server. It's asynchronously tethered with a API and database servers. All web-facing components are secured with TLS handshakes. Might be a little bit of a technical description here, but what I want to emphasize is that we could translate all the business requirements that Malcolm put out, and when matched with IATA specifications, we found that they were pretty well and mature enough to support all that the CCS UK group had put in. So once a node is created, as you can see, we then start looking at how to support the data model, and that's a little graphic on the left, which IATA puts out a lot in their communications. So we could pretty much support all of those data models and communications using their standards developed on JSON. And this was put in place in about maybe about 45 days with trials on the CCS UK side. Maybe the next slide, Isaac. Can we go to the next slide, Isaac? Okay, so thank you very much. So once that was done and trialed out, we started the trials like Malcolm mentioned, late June. Cathay Pacific was very interested in the initiative. They came forward, and GLS Hong Kong, their IT division, was put in touch with us. We started technical discussions with them on how to integrate their version that they have been developing on their Hong Kong servers. And we first started with connectivity tests. We put in place the pub-sub model, the data delegation model, because information and transparency was key to all of this right here in the airport. And we wanted to bring in more and more players and actually test the effectiveness of providing data delegation so that the peer-to-peer chain was broken and data was shared more transparently and easily. Along with that, we put the server TLS handshake in place between the CCS UK implementation and the one in Hong Kong. And we went through all of the tests before we actually put the data right into it. So thanks to Geodis's participation and WiseTech ably supporting the pilot, we were able to take a master airway bill and send it across, which was received and accepted by Cathay Pacific on their servers. They in turn turned around and sent back status messages, freight on hand messages and so on, which we could then pick up on our end and distribute it to the stakeholders within the Heathrow community. So waybills were exchanged, shipment status updates were exchanged, and the test was conducted with interrupts. What I want to emphasize is that it's so fast that much of it can be missed if you're just watching the screen. So there's not much going on the screen itself. It's server to server, and it's instantaneous, almost all the way to Hong Kong and back. So we ran the test with some interrupts to show what was going on in the background. And that kind of wrapped up the actual live end-to-end test that was conducted. After that, it was over to CCS UK to provide their results of the test. Malcolm and his colleagues have put together a 13-point test, which I think he will talk about in the next few slides. Over to you, Malcolm.
Thank you, Pramod. Next slide, please. Okay, so we had a lot of business people on the team as well, and we wanted to put some set some success criteria, and this is how we visualized it. So as Pramod has already described, we were moving data from Geodis WiseTech system across to GLS. So the idea was that once that data had left Geodis, they would actually print a hard copy airway bill, and they would scan that, send it to me, or create a PDF, and we would do an FWB check on the data. We would do a paper check, and then we would ask GLS in Hong Kong to do exactly the same, print out their hard copy, send it over to us, and we would compare both visual checks, in data integrity checks, and then share the results with the group. And I can tell you that success criteria was passed on the day of the test. It was absolutely no problem at all. And as this is data rather than paper, we didn't expect any problems, and I have to say we didn't get any. We did an online compare of the data that had left London and arrived in Hong Kong, and everything matched perfectly. So we didn't lose anything, we didn't add anything on the way through. Thank you. Next slide, please, Isaac. So just a bit of background about how we actually built and deliver the service. As I've already said, we had weekly meetings. We introduced bilateral meetings between the technical stakeholders. Obviously, not all the business people wanted to understand the bits and bytes that were going on. We actively engaged with IATA during the build, so that we were kept up to date with the specification changes. And as this is a pilot program, there were changes, and we took those forward as the system was built. We had time in this project to add some extra features, so we can now convert status messages into SMS messages and alert people who are interested in the status of their consignment, that want to retrieve it on their phones. That was part of, was added to the pilot project. And as Pramod has already said, we rehearsed the pilot with a small group, and then we carried out had the large team witness the end-to-end result, and that all went well. And at the end of that, in July, we all agreed that we would take a break in August, work through the hackathon, which Pramod and Nextshore entered, and get back together in September. And in fact, we're planning our next group to move into phase 2 of the pilot at the end of this month. Next slide, please. Just one screen to show you. This was the visualization on the Nextshore server for the airway bill logistics objects. So we ran a number through. We gave some access to the participants so they could go in and they could have a look at the data that had gone through. They could see it in the top panel as a traditional sort of Excel row and column display, and then if they wanted to examine the logistics objects, those were available underneath that they could scroll through. Next slide, please. Okay, so we've only got 2 slides to go. IATA, or David, asked us what we had learnt during the pilot, and these are, I think, are our learnings. It's very much a technical implementation with little or no visibility of the interface. That obviously can be built on top of the One Record technology, but you know, as Pramod said, this data just moves seamlessly through the system. So we learned about that, and we understand it. We, as I'd already said, we did have some changes to the specification. And I think getting a stable One Record version is essential for the industry, and maybe IATA will want to comment on that after this session. But we're looking forward to a version that is released and is stable and will be with us for some time. There is some perception that this is just a new specification for exchanging the same data, but I think those thoughts are slowly being dismissed. We need some new ideas on how to exploit One Record. In fact, we've had that session and we've got those on the table. I can't share them with you today because they've not been signed off, but we've got about 6 or 8 new ideas which we're going to look at for phase 2 of our project. I think we all learned that the internet is a safe and a secure place for a cost-effective exchange of cargo data. I've noticed over a number of years that people or companies and organisations have been using email to exchange data, and I think we all realised this was fraught with issues, and that could easily be replaced with a secure One Record server. And so the final slide is just some feedback from the two of the participants that were involved in the trial. So I'll just leave you with that slide to read, and I will hand back to David and say thank you to Pramod for his input.
Thank you,
and
Malcolm.
Pass you back to David and the team.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, Malcolm. Thank you, Pramod. It was, I think, an excellent lessons learned, good sharing. I hope that the people who are with us today, they were able to have a bit of understanding and the feeling of what's like to implement the record standard and what's like to run a product project. Thank you very much. I just wanted to remind you that if you have any questions, whether it's for this presentation or the past presentations or the future presentations, you can already submit your questions in the chat box that you may find on the Microsoft Teams. For the next sessions, I would like to welcome Christophe Lambert. He's a project manager, Digital Cargo, focused on the data model. And he will have with us guest speakers, Philippe Billion from Lufthansa Cargo, Shashank Mardikar from Swiss World Cargo, and Mary Stedding from DHL Global Forwarding. So these industry experts, they will share with us their insights, their feedback, their feeling of what's like to be part of a group of experts defining the standards. Over to you, Christophe.
Hello, everyone. So as David said, we had today 3 contributors to our task forces. So Philip, Shashank, and Mary. Hope you can see all of us. You should be able to see all of us. So we'll run through a short list of questions to really grasp what we do with OneRecord and how does the people contribute to OneRecord. So first of all, I ask each of my panelists to introduce themselves and to explain in a few words how does their contribution to OneRecord articulate with their day-to-day work. And what is their motivation, being personal or company-wise, to participate in those task forces? So I'll first start with Mary, please.
Are we in mute?
Mary, can't hear you.
As I was about to say, I'm not very technically savvy, so you understand why when I forget my mute button. Within the company, I'm involved very much in my day-to-day work, doing operations and compliance on all levels, including e-airway bill and other EDI with our customers. So for me, OneRecord is key if we want to continue moving on, and also for the company. I'm not particularly technically savvy, as I say, but my contribution on this is more on the operational side, where I work very much within the operations and our customer service side, so that we understand what our customer needs, what our shippers and consignees, plus also the carriers need for information, and also some of the other teams. So pushing all this forward through OneRecord is very important, and getting the right data there. So that's my motivation on this, is to do that, but also to learn a bit more on the technical side.
Okay, thank you very much. And I have the same question to Shashank. Are you here with us?
Like everyone in the industry, we at Swiss World Cargo face the same issues of data quality, basically when it comes to this traditional way of communication, which is via pushing data packets or messages, as we might call them. So when it comes to motivation to joining a OneRecord, the biggest motivating factor was the fact that we are moving away with this OneRecord from the concept of airport to airport communication between players within the airport-to-airport environment to end-to-end logistics chain, which means we would be involving a lot more players than we do today for data sharing. So when it comes to a shared economy like we have in today, where logistics chains stretch over the entire globe, we realize the key is proper communication with good quality data, using latest technologies like API or web services or the likes. And One Record is the right path as it incorporates all of these aspects. And that's the primary motivation for Swissword Cargo to be participating in the One Record. On a personal level, I view the working of this particular working group of IATA different from other groups I have participated in so far, because it was a unique opportunity to work on developing a data model, ontology, which is something I personally did not experience in the past. So to sum it up, these were the motivations for me personally and my company for which I work.
Thank you very much, Shank, for sharing that. And over to you, Philip.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. My name is Philip. I'm working for Lufthansa Cargo in the e-freight team. And we have been pushing e-freight all together for a few years now. And you know, it's been quite a challenge to implement this paperless infrastructure. Still, we've come quite some way, but what we experience is that there's a strict limit to what we can achieve within the current infrastructure in terms of data quality, data availability. And so the problem is, if we really want to use modern technology to, for example, do AI, predictive analytics, or big data, it's just not possible in the current infrastructure due to limitations. And One Record is, from my perspective, really the key to overcome those limitations with data at its source, clear data ownership, modern API technology. And when you look what we want to achieve and what would be the effect of a fully digital, paperless supply chain with complete transparency, it would, of course, mean the better use of assets. But in practical application, it would mean more vaccines stay within the temperature range, more ALG parts are delivered on time, and of course, less CO2 emissions. And I think this is a very important point. One Record is additionally the only standard that currently can provide full transparency end-to-end multimodal on CO2 emissions potentially. And this is really one of my personal motivations, is to somehow provide this small brick on the solution to these big challenges we are facing now. And One Record is definitely one of the keys to a solution to CO2 emissions, for example, to improved supply chains when we need them now, for example, for vaccines and so on. And I'm very happy to be a part of this team.
Thank you very much, Philip. Thank you. Then I think we'll deep dive right away with the questions we have. So we have a few questions. I have a few questions for each of you, basically. We'll first start with Mary. So basically, we know that to define a standard for a whole industry, it is essential to have contributors from the whole supply chain. We need to have all stakeholders involved. From your point of view, do you think we have managed to get a panel of experts wide enough for definition of the standard? And I address the question for the core model and for any extensions that we want to have to the model.
Yes, I think IATA have achieved that. They've got representation from both our customers, so shippers, consignees, freight forwarders, carriers, handling agents. So we've got that participation there. Where we miss any physical participation in the form of, say, the customs or some of the other areas where we'd like to start extending, particularly I would say customs at the moment, because we see that as very much key. IATA are able to interface with the relevant teams, the relevant people, and therefore we can get the feedback that we need. I think, though, going forward, if we're going to extend the scope, and I think the scope of this should really be extended to all modes of transport, we need to get more involvement there from truckers, hauliers, ocean freight, rail carriers, so that we can therefore also link all that data. We have customers and we move shipments over multimodal. We may start with an air freight movement that then moves to a rail movement or moves to a sea freight movement. So we need to have those extra people, the extra teams involved to ensure that we can extend our data model to cover their requirements as well as those that we have. Because ocean freight isn't the same as air freight, the same for road and rail. There are slight differences in what they need and the documentation they currently use, which we want to put forward now in an electronic format, rather than transferring pieces of paper everywhere.
Thank you, Mary. And I think the last point you mentioned is very, very important, interesting, especially knowing that we are contributing as well to some EU initiatives, DTLF and Federated, that really aim to have an overview and a multimodal approach. And of course, this is something that we have in mind. We are working with the EU and our other participants on that. But of course, there is a long way to go. And once we have I think the basis of One Record is really ready, really, I would say, future-proof. It would be a good time to really deep dive into the multimodal approach and to really try to get all of this work together.
Yeah, we need to get we need to start with it in one area, get one lot of one mode of transport sorted really before we then extend it. But we need to be careful that we don't make it too difficult to spread it out and move it on to these other modes of transport.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Then my next questions to move forward would be to Philip. So Philip, you said in your introduction you've been working for quite a couple of years in the industry, and you have been contributing to other task forces like One Record in the past. And according to you, what is different in the way we work with One Record, and what is interesting compared to other initiatives that you have known?
Well, I think a very interesting point is that this change we are trying to implement here is on a whole new scale. In the past, we were very much focused on standards for the industry, by the industry, which was more or less the air transportation industry, including forwarders and authorities and so on. But this scale, of course, must be on a much larger. This change must be on a much larger scale. That means we have a lot of new stakeholders we need to include. We have other kind of stakeholders like startups, digital platforms, stakeholders from other modes, and this requires new methodology and new tools. And the way of including those many stakeholders is, first of all, radical openness, and second, it must be free and freely accessible, the standard. We all agreed in the beginning that the outcome of One Record cannot be a toolkit to purchase or a handbook to buy. It must be an open standard that not only is freely available to everyone, but that also every stakeholder can steer changes in, even though he's not participating in the task force or is not, part of the traditional setting here. And the way to do this, we had an example with the open source community orchestration, where exactly that works. We have, Linux operating system where a lot of stakeholders that might never meet or that might use the solution for totally different purposes are collaborating and improving the standard. And this is exactly what we try to do here. There might be some potential left, but I think we're on a good way with using GitHub as a repository for the standard, because GitHub is, available to everybody who can open a web browser. Everybody can steer in change requests, and the history of those change requests and everything should be fully transparent and visible. And in the end, what you will experience once you have adopted to a little bit more open and transparent way of working is that it's just a lot more fun to work like this, because you get a lot more feedback. You get a shorter feedback cycle here and more feedback from those who are really implementing. And I think this is a model that will be used in the future much more than we used to do it in the past.
Thank you. Indeed, I think it's really something new in the way we are working with a more open way of working, and that really drives me to a next question that is really related to that. Is we know that basically defining standards is a long way to go, especially in this industry. The history has told us that even if we manage to define standards quickly, the implementation can be very, very long. And the thing is that current events or the crisis we have faced during the past month has really driven us to seek for a shorter time to market. How do you think we manage to progress with incremental deliverables and rapidly with one record?
Yeah, I mean, you could see it in Malcolm's presentation very well. What we try to do is to get two components here, speed and feedback. That means we're trying to get a very close feedback link to those who are implementing and who are applying the standard. And that means we are not aiming for a big bang rollout worldwide. We're not expecting that. That's not going to happen. But what should happen to implement one record is really a lot of small use cases around an MVP approach where you get a tangible value out of some functionality that you implement with one record. And the feedback from those small partitions of value that you add with one record should directly be steered back into the standard. So what this results in is a permanent revision of the standard. A lot of the aspects are, I think, very stable. But of course, once you start implementing, you will see that there's room for improvement. And one record, in contrast to maybe approaches of the past, embraces this changing environment, the changing technology that we have. If you talk to developers in startups, they absolutely see that as normal. You're constantly not only implementing what you get, but you give feedback, you try to improve, you make smaller suggestions in a very quick feedback loop. And this is where we want to end up. And I think we are all trying to live these principles now. It's new for all of us, but I think we're on a good way here. And it's the same, like I said before, it is a lot more fun because you have this close connection, you define something, then you get feedback on exactly that, and then you improve. And you get a feeling for, where you're good, where you're not so good, where you can improve by yourself too. And this is really something that's very motivating in the end.
Thank you. I do agree with you that the iterative approach is really something that is the new black, if I can say that. It's really an approach that the world is embracing basically. And it's really interesting that within IATA and within such a huge initiative, we have the flexibility and we have the possibility to try and test in the way we would want to. Thank you very much, Philip. This drives me to the next question that I will ask to both Shashank and Mary because their different point of views are interesting on this one. So I'll first ask Shashank, what are the challenges to gather requirements from the stakeholders across the whole industry that we have? And how do you think we manage to reach a certain consensus to make things move forward?
So we all know that with one record concept, as I just mentioned some time back, we move from this airport to airport player concept to a logistics chain concept. It simply means we are now involving more partners than just airlines and forwarders. So we now are also talking about shippers, trucking companies, Of course, the carriers, the handlers, the forwarders, but also regulators like customs and security. Now, it's nice to have more players from the logistics chain participating in sharing data on a common platform, but it also brings about a lot of challenges, as we quickly realized when we started discussing the topic of one record. To give a simple example or example which we all can relate with, I remember we had really long, hectic discussions on simple topics, seemingly simple topics like what does a piece mean? And we realized a piece means really a lot of different things for different players. We realized a shipper piece is different from a forwarder piece, is different from a carrier piece, might also sometimes be different from a handler piece. So, you know, we have this concept of a piece within a piece within a piece. And a topic which is as simple and taken to be granted was suddenly a big hurdle which we had to clear. So in a nutshell, the big challenge in this particular topic was to have a universal understanding and a common meaning to a term which was the piece. It's just an example, but these were some of the bigger fundamental challenges that we faced when we started discussing this topic. Easy to say, but of course, we did learn over a period of time to master these challenges and to overcome them. And one of the primary steps we had to do was whenever we hit a discussion like this, we took a couple of steps back, tried to break down the topic and reconstruct it in a way that made universal sense to the industry rather than individual players within the logistics chain. I wouldn't like to call it a compromise, but yes, we did have to have a bit of it in order to come up with a universal sense. It's rather difficult to explain in words the feelings and the atmosphere during these discussions, but it certainly was something we got better at as time went by. And I believe we now have kind of mastered this technique of universal understandings.
Yeah, it takes a lot of work to do this, I think, as well, because not only have you got people from different parts of the industry, you've got different people with different language barriers to some extent as well, because what a word means, what a piece means, or what a shipment means in industry terms could also mean something different within a language, and therefore we have to actually even get down to drawing diagrams and descriptions to help us get that consensus across the whole team. We've got to that in most cases. I'm sure, as Shashank said, there are people who have had to make slight compromises on what they believe is a piece or what they believe is a shipment. But all in all, it's working well together, and in the end, once it's all written down and clearly documented, we know what we're talking about, so everybody knows what we're referring to, and we get there in the end, but it does take time.
Only 15 to 20 people that are representing the industry, and we already have these kind of discussions, so of course these topics are really interesting and bring can bring lots of confusion if we want to have specific terms that can be I would say widely accepted within the industry. And also I think Mary, from a forwarder point of view, you can have a different angle also, a different approach to these kind of topics, right?
Yeah, I mean, we also have to look at it from the shipper's point of view as well, not just the forwarders. I mean, we talk about a shipment. From a shipment to our shippers or our consignees is the complete item. From again, from a forwarder, we would refer to their shipment as a shipment. So their house bill is a shipment. But when you get to the point of talking to the carriers about it, their idea of a shipment is a master bill level, which for a forwarder could be a consolidation of various customers' shipments. So we have pieces in pieces, we have shipments in shipments. It all gets very, very interesting and on the discussion side, but we get there in the end. So I think, you know, we're working there. There is still a way to go, and I think we're going to find these challenges will come up again when we move on to pulling in other modes of transport as well in other areas.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you very much for sharing that. Time is slowly not running out but moving on. So we'll go through the next and last question before the Q&A session where we can all participate. My last question is for Shashank, because I think you've been the most affected by the crisis that we have been through. We all know that the whole world has been impacted by this crisis, especially the air industry. But in the meantime, cargo has played a very critical role in this by allowing basically to send essential supplies across the globe in a matter of days. And the air cargo is basically the only mode of transport that can allow that. We want maps from China, for example. We want them tomorrow. Air cargo is the only mode of transport to offer that. And since it has impacted the whole industry, Shashank, especially on your side, how do you see this crisis has impacted the way we work, the way we operate within the task forces, and how do you think we have coped with it?
I think the impact of the pandemic, besides our personal lives, has been nothing short of amazing. It's such a huge impact that we have on the air industry, so to speak. The first thing that we had was a big reduction in capacities. I'm talking from a carrier perspective. We suddenly started shipping a lot different variety of commodities as compared to what we did before the pandemic. So we suddenly had a dip in regular shipments, so to speak, and we started transporting PPEs and masks and other medical equipments on a priority base. With the whole reduction in capacity and demand on the passenger side, obviously we very quickly ended up in shortened working hours for cost reasons, obviously. Besides these obvious changes, we also started with this working from home concept, which meant we were no longer in office and we had to look for new ways and quickly adapt to new ways of collaboration within teams that we work with. And needless to say, when it came to working of the One Record task force and our working methods, we had to adapt accordingly. The biggest change that was immediately felt was this shifting from face-to-face working modes to going completely virtual. Yes, I agree. We continued to do the same things and work on the same topics as we did before, but the feel was completely different. It was nothing like how we were used to working, discussing face-to-face, walking to the whiteboard, making drawings, arguing, discussing, and also having fun. We did that, but we had to do everything virtually, and that was a big difference. Besides just the virtual aspect of interacting with people, I believe we made a big progress, or we quickly adapted to means of communication and collaboration, because suddenly now minutes of the meeting had gained a quite big prominence, rather than listening to someone, interacting with someone, and moving forward. It was kind of challenging. It was difficult, but I think over the last 5 months we have done an amazing job as a team, and I think we mastered this techniques of working virtual, which I believe would be quite normal in the future. Last but not the least, the most amazing fact for me personally was the fact that for a change in a passenger airline like the one I work for, cargo suddenly was the star and the driver of business. So that was a big revelation for me.
I see both Philip and Mary having their thumbs up.
Yeah, it has been a challenge, and I think we've got a bigger challenge to come when it gets to the point with the vaccines. It's a shame we don't necessarily have one record already there, because I think that would help us more with the movements. We're not there yet. It's a journey. We'll be there. We will get there.
Okay. Well, I have some signals from all over the room telling me that we have to go to the Q&A session. I really thank you, three of you. It was really interesting feedbacks that you gave. I will give back the microphone to David to wrap this up and drive us to the Q&A session. Thank you again, guys.
Thank you, Christophe. Thank you, Marie. Thank you, Philippe, and thank you, Shashank. Now we are entering to the last part of the session with the Q&A session. We received quite a few questions, and actually, I believe that I will be able to distribute these questions to you guys. So maybe the first one I will have is for Malcolm. What would be your advice to other potential new pilot participants like CCSs? Malcolm, do you want to take that?
Yes, sorry, David, could you just read that one again?
So what would be?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is going to the IATA repository. All of the information is there, and it's extremely thorough. So do your homework and go and get that information. Make sure you're in contact with IATA. You've got some great resources there with the team. There'd be absolutely no reason why you couldn't go to use one of the existing pilot services, because they've been built, and I'm sure they could help you along the way. And I think pull together as wide a group as possible from the industry so that everybody in your area gets involved and participates, because we had a great team in Heathrow, and it was the team that pulled it all together in the end.
Thank you, Malcolm. Then the second question is more, it's a question and a comment. Maybe that one is for Pramod. So one record looks very promising, but will it not require the cargo system provider to take further actions than concept project? So one record can really take off. What's your thought of it, Pramod?
Yes, David, let me try to understand that question. They're asking about cargo systems providers. Do they mean software houses, IT houses, or do they mean the cargo carriers?
No, the system provider.
Oh, the system
IT providers.
Yes. So what I think the answer to that is, David, is to be able to follow lockstep with IATA and their ambition in taking this to the market and getting adopted. What I really feel is that being in sync with IATA's specification development and its maturity, and your scorecard on many of those ontologies and ideation phases and so forth that you put up is very important. Once you follow through that, the systems providers can easily adapt to it. There may be a couple of changes down the road also, is what I believe from what I hear from Andra and others. This may go through one more iteration, a couple more iterations, but I think it will fall into place pretty quickly. So cargo systems providers can easily adapt to it. All they have to do is to plug in to a front end where their data that they have already maintained for their customers can be put into one record format. Once that one record format is created within the one record ecosystem, if you will, all the features of one record can be leveraged. It's as simple as that. And we all know that the power of APIs, as demonstrated in the hackathon, can prove it. All you have to be able to do is get that data in. They don't have to be, actually developing new cargo systems or developing a lot of features or put in a lot of investment. All they need to do is to be able to, integrate into the one record concept. And there are now, we're sort of trying to make this very easy plug and play. So all they have to do is, take one off the shelf that's built up and plug it in, make sure the APIs work back and forth, and they're all set to go. they don't really have to change much in terms of their software or their investments. Hope that answers the question.
Now, thank you very much, Pramod. I really like this message of hope that you just conveyed on how easy it is to implement a one record.
It is quite easy. Yes.
Thank you. Then the next question, I'll give it to Christophe. So Mary mentioned the need for multimodal data sharing. Is there any actual work being done in that direction?
Thank you, David, for that question. It's a very interesting one, especially we, as I said briefly, we are working in various EU projects. And one of the main one is the Federated project, which is basically comprising of 15 to 20 different countries in Europe. And the idea is that all of these countries represent all of the transport modes. IATA in Finland being representing mostly the air sector. And right after the quarantine that was in March, May, April, we launched a semantic modeling group, which is a dedicated task force within the Federated project that aims to align and to work on a common semantic language between all transport modes. So the idea behind that is to align all the existing and work in progress standards for a different mode of transport. And it's a work in progress, and I think the outcomes would be very interesting because we should be able to get out of this semantic modeling group with I would say a common language that can really ease the afterwards implementation among different transport modes.
Thank you, Christophe. Then the next questions, how do you see the transition from Cargo AMP to one record? So maybe this one I will distribute it to Philippe. You're on mute, Philippe.
Well, I guess that's a lot better now. Thank you for the question. First of all, Cargo Imp is an outdated standard. It's not supported. It's not updated anymore. So the thing is, with more and more challenges from new requirements that we can hardly or not at all fulfill with the traditional EDI messages. So if you look at the next step is Cargo XML, which is a lot better, but still based, of course, on the current infrastructure and its limitations. But so what you do not have is some kind of a backward compatibility where you can convert between one record and Cargo Imp or Cargo XML, because that will kill you the benefits you have from the whole new approach with a single source of truth, with an API-based approach and all that. But what we did to make the transition easier, of course, we used the data field definitions from Cargo XML to as a basis for the data fields in one record, because we have logistic objects for companies that are established, that are working in Cargo XML that we can reuse for one record. So if you support Cargo XML in your operations, in your IT, then you have a good chance that the transition to one record might not be that harsh in the end, because the field length limitations are not there and so on. But as I said, you cannot have a backward compatibility in one record, and I think that's the right way not to do it, because the whole mindset, the whole basic approach is very different. And the third point is, of course, if you use ADI and you do not have a real sustainable paperless process with Earwable, for example, in the background, you also cannot do one record, because what you need is, of course, you cannot put the paper in the cloud. So as a precondition for one record, you really need to have a data-driven process, no matter if it's Cargo XML, if it's Cargo Imp, or if it's already run record. But those are preconditions that you need to fulfill, and you cannot, for example, skip from a paper process to one record and not take the steps in between. But I think the industry has done a great job in the last years digitizing the core processes and the interfaces between customers and the airlines, and we are well prepared here.
Thank you, Philippe. It's already 3:32. I will take 2 other questions and then we'll close the webinar. So one question maybe, I don't know whether it's to Malcolm or Pramod. In your mind, how can you ensure data security in such that really only the party can have access to the data, which is supposed to have the information?
I think it's Malcolm here. I'll pass that to Pramod because he's implemented the security against the IATA standard, and I think we're all absolutely clear it's as secure as it can be. But Pramod, perhaps you want to talk a bit about the technicalities.
Not a problem at all. The security model it does its job. Let me tell you that, and the data delegation aspect of it also is very well founded. So the owner of the data does not have to actually relinquish that control over that piece of data that they've created within the network, and they can only delegate whatever they need to be shared with their partners. The PubSub, of course, is just the mechanism by which it's done, but in all truth, I think the permission levels can be set up in such a way that the objects can be controlled as to who receives it. Now, if it is 1 degree down the chain, if a data delegation is requested up to the chain of the owner, then the owner can decide if the person delegating the data can be put on the network or not and can have access to it or not. So this is possible with the architecture that IATA has put out and worked so well with Andra and her security team and so on and so forth. The concept is very well founded, and you can completely control the sharing of data to any level and any degree you want. Even within an embedded object, within a whole object, you can actually control the data. So, for example, if you want to mask out financial information from an airway bill, you can do that and share only operational information down the chain, and so on and so forth. Even if somebody sends a request up, you can deny it, and that's simply done by refusing access. So the person who does not own the data cannot delegate it at all. So there's no question of any further leakage or anything else going on. So we've actually demonstrated this in a small way by making the airway bill available to the ground handler in the case of CCS UK, which was Donata, by the way. And also, when the shipment status updates come through, we have requested delegation all the way down to, again, the ground handling staff and their accounts. And they can send in the delegation through the carrier, which was CX, I mean, Cathay Pacific in this case. And the data is all owned by Geodis, of course. So with that model in place, the entire network gets aware of all the status updates, the events, and all the important activity in the network.
Thank you, Pramod. And then the last question, it's going to be for Mary. So forwarders today offer a portal to their customers to capture data. How do you see the likelihood of shipper to embrace the one record standards?
I mean, it depends on our shippers, I think. There are some people who will have their own access the same as we do today. We provide them with EDI feeds to get data into us and also to get data from us. But I think we will still probably have the requirement to have a portal or some kind of access for them to be able to see their shipments, to actually book with us when they're not in a position to have actual EDI feeds with us or use the one record to put the data in the first place. So I think that it will still we will still have to have a portal and go forward that way, because there will be people who will not be in a position to necessarily use one record, but that should feed into one record.
Thank you, Mary. And with that, I will gently close the session as we're running late already. Thank you very much, Mary. Thank you very much, Philippe, Pramod, Malcolm, Christophe, Shashank, and Isaac for the webinar, and Andra for the demonstrations. The next session will be in next week, dedicated to digital connectivity on September the 22nd. And same week, we'll have the interactive cargo session, Thursday, the 24th of September. Thank you very much, and have a good day. Good morning.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.